Beavs football looks to turn things around after a blowout in week 1. Can the defense find their footing against an FCS opponent? And what aspects of the offense are moving in the right direction? Another edition of Go Beavs starts now. State this weekend as they welcome in Portland State for week 2. The Beavers say they will be ready to show that last week was a fluke. Welcome into Go Beavs. Amanda Maynard, Lindsay Schnell, and Jason John Baptiste joining us this week. We have a great show coming your way, including we're going to be breaking down just what went wrong in the run game, run defense. Is Portland State much of a threat? Plus, we have Bright Agwebu sharing his story from Hurricane Harvey. He's a Houston native. He's got some incredible images he's going to share with us. That's a little later in the show. But first, we're going to start with Portland State as we get ready for game day. What things are you guys going to be looking for that this team you think is going to improve on this week?
Well, you know, for me, the one thing that I want to see is whether or not they're able to stop the Portland State running game. Okay. You know, they continue to have issues with stopping the run. Are they able to stop this FCS opponent running the football? This is the perfect opportunity for them to do that. We'll see. We'll see if they can actually, you know, dominate a game.
I'm actually most interested to see what the crowd reaction is going to be like if they don't dominate right away. There are a lot of people on social media this week after getting blown out at Colorado State who are worried that the world is ending, and I empathize with those people. I understand why they feel that way, but also I think that things will get better. You usually see a huge improvement from week 1 to week 2, but if they don't, do fans boo? I'm fascinated to see that.
Okay. Well, obviously, coaches always say it's never as bad on film. We caught up with offensive coordinator Kevin McGiven to get his take on what his unit can build on.
The third down efficiency was something that was very glaring last year. We were 10 to 16 on third down, and so that was something that was really nice to see. Our first down efficiency wasn't very good, but we managed on second down to get ourselves into third down situations that were manageable. You know, there weren't a whole bunch of third and longs, and you know, most of the third and longs we got into, we didn't convert as much on those, but you know, we were very efficient. And you saw a lot of extended drives where it was just like a drive killer that kind of where the drive stalled out, and we got to eliminate some of those drive killers. But in that first half, I think there was a 9-play drive, a 10-play drive, and 11-play drive that each of them didn't result in points. You know, and so those are the ones where you can't have. You got to capitalize on those drives, especially when you're grinding it down the field, hopefully wearing an opponent out. But you know, it might have the reverse effect where we got a little bit worn out on the back end of those drives also.
So small sample size, but they converted 62% on third down versus the Rams. This is a look at their averages over the last 2 seasons. When you look at the offense in particular, what positives did you see that this team can really build on this week?
Well, I wrote down about third downs also. You know, they were 10 of 16. The biggest thing is you want to turn those into trips into the red zone, too. They need a lot more of those. But outside of the interceptions, one of which was not Luton's fault, he played pretty well, and he threw to multiple receivers, which is great. So I think that there are things to build off of. Yeah,
I think in terms of passing the ball, I think Noah Togiai and also Villeman, he seemed to be having a good working relationship with those two specifically. I think he could probably improve in his relationship with some of the other receivers. It seems like he was having some issues with communication with Hodgins. They weren't really on the same page there.
They targeted him a lot,
They
too,
did.
Really.
They did. So I think he could definitely improve upon that. And obviously, again, running the football. Be more consistent with running the football, be more effective with running the football. Noah had a really good game in terms of the end game. He had 115 yards rushing, but 75 of those yards came from one play.
Right. Well, and what's interesting, too, is Gary Anderson talked about what he hopes the offense will be, 60% run, 40% pass. That obviously is in stark contrast to what we saw in the first week. Yeah. What do you feel like this team's identity will be on offense?
It has to be that they can run the ball.
You have that many people, right?
The problem is that right now they really don't have an identity. Now, it's tough. They've only played 1 game, but there was so much positive to build off of out of 2016 that you would think they would come in and say, this is who we are. On the flip side of that, and we talked about this last week, people are going to stack the box against them.
Right.
But I think that their goal needs to be, we run the football. That's every coach will tell you, you got to do 2 things to win. You got to run the football and you got to stop the run.
Yeah, and here's the thing for me is that, listen, Sean Harlow. Remember that name because he was the enforcer on that offensive line last year. He's gone. So who do you have now who's going to be the nasty, the grinder, the guy that really imposes his will upon the opponent? They don't really have that right now. They really don't. So someone needs to step their game up, become the Sean Harlow of this year, and then be able to run the ball. You have him in the box, so what? Run the ball anyway, So.
I was surprised that Jake Luton had a decent amount of time, so that's a positive to build on
Absolutely.
as well. Defensively, our defensive guy, what do you feel like the defense identity is going to be?
Can they have one?
Yeah, will they find it in time?
Here's the thing, is that I don't think they have one.
Okay.
Quite frankly.
That is a problem, right?
That is a huge problem because typically speaking, you're either able to stop the run and they pass the ball on you, or you're able to, defend the pass and they run the ball on you. This defense is having issues doing both. So teams are able to pass the ball when they want to pass the ball. They're able to run the ball whenever they want to run the ball. And they haven't been able to stop anybody, as seen from last week. So that's something that they're definitely going to have to improve upon. The defensive line is going to have to play better if they're going to be able to beat, the vast majority of the opponents that they're seeing this year. So it's going to be, it's a work in progress, but it needs to happen faster. And I mean, now.
To piggyback off that, one thing I've thought of is it's kind of crazy to think of a Gary Anderson team not being able to play defense, but we might be in that position for a while, so they might just have to outscore people.
Yeah.
So the offense really has to get going.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that they will be better, Jason, when you look at them, about stopping the run versus stopping the pass? Like, do you like the secondary better than you like the line? Or is it just everybody, just we got to see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, they have, talent in the secondary. Xavier Crawford, he was a freshman All-American American last year. So they have talent in the secondary. From a defensive standpoint, the run typically is always easier to stop. But that hasn't been the case with this team. They've had issues with the front line, and yeah, I don't know. I really don't.
And I'm very curious to see how Xavier Crawford plays this week, because on Wednesday's show we heard about Gary Anderson challenging him to step up his game.
If I were Xavier Crawford, I'd be having the game of my life.
Yeah, we'll see how he plays tomorrow. Well, a story you definitely want to stick around for later in the show. Brett Agwebu is going to join us to share how his family is doing after having to leave their home due to flooding from Hurricane Harvey. And up next, a closer look at Portland State. They've got a newbie at quarterback. So is it time for the defense to find their stride? Back here on Go Beavs, and a look at who is a go and who's not in the Beavers injury report. No surprises on who's out. Still waiting for Seth Collins to be back. But Alu Aiden, a key part of the D-line, is questionable. I can imagine it'll be pretty tough if he cannot go. I know depth's been an issue there, but they've been also really high on what he's done in fall camp. If he's not out there, how big of a deal is that?
Well, it's next man up. I mean, that's what it boils down to. I mean, he's not the starter per se. So there is that where, the starter is going to have to probably play a little bit more, play more downs. But yeah, it's next man up when it comes to that.
But it won't be 117 degrees in Corvallis on Saturday, hopefully not anyway. Yeah. So that should help, because that was a big thing. They were just exhausted, and Colorado State was going on some long drive. So it will certainly depth is good, but if they don't have him, it's not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah. Okay, time now for our opponent preview, brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. Vikings have only beaten an FBS team 4 times in school history, but 2 of those coming in 2015 in Bruce Barnum's first season. He was coach of the year that season. And Portland State, opening the season against BYU, played them pretty close. So, I mean, we've seen some pretty epic games over the years of FCS teams knocking off FBS teams.
Today's the 10-year anniversary of Appalachian State, Michigan.
And that was a crazy one. I remember that. Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of problems can these teams cause?
Well, the biggest thing, I think, and ever since Appalachian State, Michigan, we know that this isn't the case anymore, hopefully not, but FBS teams can overlook FCS opponents. And Jason, you and I were talking about this kind of tends to happen sometimes in Oregon State. Kind of a pattern.
Yeah, and it's one of the hardest things to deal with being an Oregon State fan, is that there's this underlying, feeling that just around the corner, just around the bend, there's this disappointment that's almost inevitable. And it's hard, because you always, hope and wish for the best, and you could see them making their way toward trending towards, playing better. My biggest fear is that they lose this game. and that's the way that this season so far has started. I'm hoping that's not the case, and they shouldn't lose the game, but it's Oregon State.
When I covered Oregon State for the Oregonian, one of the best lines I ever wrote was they beat someone in 2012 that they weren't supposed to, and I said, part of being an Oregon State fan is waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it's true. Yeah. I know that it's mean, but
very
it's
hard.
But you know what? This is what it means to be a hardcore fan. And Oregon State fans, true and true, they are hardcore fans because we deal with the pain and the agony and all that stuff that happens when you lose a game that you're not supposed to lose, and you get check this word out, a 31-point shellacking from CSU. But we're still here. And we're just waiting. We're waiting for that tide to turn.
Do you feel, I have to ask a question, do you feel like fans' expectations are changing or need to change, or?
And I say this with a little bit of hesitation, being a former player myself, is that I think we need to slow down just a little bit and not have such a high expectation for Oregon State. They're still finding their way. They still are struggling with recruiting the type of talent they need in order to make a difference and make a change in the conference. So I do believe that we need to kind of slow down, and a lot of fans should probably slow down.
So Portland State starting a true freshman quarterback. Wasn't a bad performance, 16 of 36, 134 yards in their loss to BYU. Gary Anderson said he thought he was pretty poised in this one. What do you think they need to do to kind of shake him up, get to him? How important is that going to be?
Contain him, contain him. This kid can move. He's pretty mobile. He is like many quarterbacks you've seen. He's 5'11", 185. He can escape the pocket. That has been problematic for a lot. I don't know if there's any team in college football, quite frankly, that's good at stopping a mobile quarterback.
So I'm going to throw a name at you right now.
Okay, here we go.
Tell me if you remember this name. Vernon Adams.
I know.
Sure.
Vernon.
I think he's still giving nightmares to fans.
Did they struggle with Vernon Adams?
Yes, although, it was a different scheme, and Baker in particular, I think, really didn't know how to contain a mobile.
Yeah, but, stature-wise, 5'11", 100. It's FCS. There seems to be a lot of, coincidences there, so I don't know. We'll see.
No, I know, Lindsay, you said on Wednesday's show that, the coaching staff had talked to Kalani Sitake about the Vikings, playing them just a week ago. What were some of the things that they were keeping their eyes out for? The
cornerbacks played really well for Portland State. And who plays for Portland State? Either of you know who's a cornerback who has Pac-12 experience? That would be Chris Cisse, who played at Oregon his freshman and sophomore year. Started in the Rose Bowl and in the national championship game. He had 3 pass breakups against BYU. That's a kid that's not going to be intimidated by this environment.
Yeah.
And also on the defensive end, they have a pretty good guy up front, Devon Dade.
Yeah.
He was a Big Sky Player of the Week, 4 solo tackles, sack last weekend.
He was stout.
Yeah, what do you anticipate him looking like?
Yeah, he's gonna cause some issues up front for them. I could tell you that. He's a really high motor, high active guy. Had a couple assisted tackles for losses during the BYU game, and also had a sack. So he could be a load up front for them. So they're gonna have to be aware of where he is and be able to block him all throughout the day.
But as you pointed out, Amanda, the Beavers did a good job. The offensive line did a good job. Luton had a lot of time to throw. He only got sacked once. He said this week he likes to think he's a little faster than people give him credit for, so he's going to escape the pocket if necessary.
He had some moves.
That's going to be big for them. And you don't want him to get hit after throwing either.
Yeah.
All right, still ahead, we're checking in on who might be a new potential bromance on the team.
Is there a bromance going on there at all?
Nah, just.
Don't be ashamed if there is.
That's my brother. That's my brother. I won't call it a bromance. Call it that's my brother.
Brother, bromance, same thing, right? Okay, Mark Parker visits after the break what he thinks it'll take for this team to get back on track. Well, 2 very different halves for Oregon State against Colorado State. Here's a look at those by the numbers. The Beavs trailed by 4 before the Rams rattled off 13 straight points. And Oregon State will certainly have to cut down on those turnovers come Saturday, 5 against Colorado State in week 1. We're bringing in Mike Parker from Corvallis to get his take on what the Beavers need to do. Mike, what are you hoping to see from the Beavers this week? What do they need to change going forward?
I'm not sure that a lot needs to change as far as schemes and plans and ways of going about attacking the game, Amanda. Certainly, as you mentioned, the turnovers have to be virtually eliminated. But as far as what they want to do, I think they want to see a better balance in terms of run-pass, even more 60-40 to the run side of things. They weren't able quite to get to that as the score grew, and they needed to keep throwing, and that game got away from them. I'm hoping that above all, what they need to do is distance themselves somewhat psychologically from the blow, the disappointment that game was for all of us in Beaver Nation, the coaches, players, fans, etc. I mean, that was a disappointing way to begin the year, but it doesn't mean they have to utterly reinvent themselves or they have to throw their hands in the air and say, woe is me, I guess we're not that good after all. They've got to get away from that kind of sort of defeatist mentality and take the things from execution that they lacked. The communication issues, the lack of communication at times, defensively in particular, hurt them. I think if they stay the course with everything they worked on going into the camp, they can get back on track.
I know run defense was something that they were hoping to improve on this year. How would you assess how they looked in game one and moving forward? You know, how do you think they're going to shape up?
The two biggest things that Coach Anderson talked about, Amanda, that the Beavers had to do better, throw the ball better. I think Jake Luton threw the ball better. They threw it well at times. Got to cut down on turnovers and so on in the passing game. A fumble after a catch, a fumble on a fly sweep, 3 interceptions, only one of which really you could pin on Jake. But on the run defense, that was disappointing. There was a sense of attrition as that game wore along, and head coach Gary Anderson recognized that things have to get better.
The game was 4.4 a carry, basically. Is that glaring bad? No, but it's better than it was a year ago, but it's not good enough. And when I say that, I really top that off by saying at the end when we needed to stop it, we did it. Right, we just didn't. We did not tackle well enough at the end of the game when they got up into their big people and they came out, and we know those plays. They know those plays. You know, it's a toss, it's a lead, it's this and that, and that's where those fits are so very important because you don't see that type of football very often. And if I use an example of, you know, that professional scenario that I'm talking about and functioning at a high level, that would be where you have to be so in key with each other to be able to stop those things. So we need improvement in that area in the run game, and then it's a huge point of emphasis. We just got to keep banging away at it and get better.
Coach Anderson is, you know, he talks about what Colorado State was able to do at 117 degrees on the field and at 5,100 feet. There was a sense of attrition as that thing wore along. Colorado State, to its credit, got big, took advantage of those elements and fresher legs. And so a lot of those run numbers were skewed late, I think, to the negative. But that is an offense out of the I formation with the lead and the toss and a pro set much of the game. The Beavers won't see that a lot. That's what Gary alluded to. So when they do deal with it later, they've got to communicate better. But already they've worked on a lot of those issues up front. I expect the run defense to be a lot better Saturday, a lot better when they play Minnesota. And I think in the end, they'll look at that Colorado State game more as the anomaly than what to expect across the board in 2017.
And we are bringing in our defensive expert to break down just what went wrong. We heard from Gary Anderson, obviously his perspective. Jason, we're going to take a look at a couple plays. One play from this game and another play from Portland State, a positive Portland State play against BYU. Where are you seeing the breakdown here?
So to me, the biggest issue is with keeping contained. And what I mean by that is that every single time it seems like that the opponent wants to run outside, they have the ability to do so. And the issue here is that, as you could tell with this play, it's a double tight end formation. This guy right here is running to the other side of the formation. So now you have absolutely no one out here. The only person that you have out here is this guy who, his job and his responsibility is to keep the edge, make sure that he keeps the running play inside. That does not happen. What ends up happening is that he ends up inside, as well as this linebacker right here and this linebacker right here. So they all end up in the same gap. And what ends up happening is that it's an easy read for the running back to then bounce this outside and
in for the touchdown.
In for the touchdown. You'll see exactly what I mean here.
And you really said, again, that's not necessarily play calling. It's
it's just it's
technique.
technique. Instead of shutting the linebacker to the, shutting the tight end to the inside, he shuts him to the outside, and then the tight end is able to block him inside, and then the running back is able to run outside.
Makes an easy block.
Makes it very easy for him.
Now, again, Portland State, they've had some solid running backs in the past, and this is a positive play against BYU.
Yeah, exactly. So what you see here is that this is 3rd and 13 here, right? So this is what BYU thinks to be a passing play ends up actually being more so of like a running play. It's a swing pass. So what ends up happening here is that these two guys will come off the line of scrimmage, not even looking to receive the ball because they're coming off to block. So they'll block the first two people that they see. The running back will then swing to the outside, be able to catch the ball from Easton, and then run forward for a first down and a little bit more.
And where do you anticipate the Beavers making strides
adjustments
this week?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that if this continues to happen over and over again, there has to be some kind of coaching changes that are made. I think what they'll end up doing is that they end up telling the outside linebacker, telling the defensive end, listen, you have to keep containing. If you don't do that, we're going to have issues, continuing issues.
All right, much more with Jason to come. Still to come on the show, another early game day for Oregon State. How does that change things for the team? But first, some powerful images from Hurricane Harvey. Brett Igwebu sharing his family's story about how they're doing after being displaced from the storm. Big time goals for the defense this season. Gary Anderson wants 60 combined sacks and takeaways, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 sack to open up week 1. Well, one of the reasons to have high hopes for the Beavers defense this season is a healthy Bright Igwebu. Bright is back this season after missing the final 3 games of 2016 with a foot injury. He's joining us now from Corvallis. Bright, last season, 54 tackles, including a team high, 5.5 sacks, even with missing those final couple of games. How do you feel now that you've got 1 game back under your belt health-wise?
I feel good. I think I was really taking that game as a tester to see where my foot was and where I was, returning back to playing competitively with my team, and it went great for me. After the game, my foot felt fine, although we took the loss, but body-wise, I felt great. My body felt up to speed. I felt like I didn't miss a step, so I'm really excited for this next weekend.
I know coaches are certainly happy to have you back. Very excited for you to be such a vocal leader and a leader on the defense. What are some of your personal goals this season after suffering the foot injury and having a great season before that?
Personal goals for me would be to lead the team again in sacks, double-digit sacks, double-digits tackle for losses, and just do everything I can possible to make big plays and give my team and defense an edge on the opposing team.
What did you think of the defense's performance in week 1?
I wasn't too impressed. I think we didn't play as physical as we usually do. We weren't ourselves. And that's an easy way to lose. When we play our football, when we play assignment sound, discipline sound football, then it's very hard to beat us. And we did the opposite of that this last weekend. So the result, showed that.
What encourages you, though, about the group of guys that you have that makes you feel like there's hope for this defense? You guys can be better than last year.
Just the steps we've taken in preparation heading up to this season. Guys have taken this, the workouts, the plays, the individual work that we should do outside of the schedule stuff that we have to do. They're taking that way more seriously, and it's not, a grueling thing. It's not, oh, we got to get up and go do this. It's everyone's excited to go get better. So that alone is telling me that we're going to have a better season, and we're going to push for that.
Turning to a more personal note, so many people obviously being affected by Hurricane Harvey, including your family. You're from Katy, Texas, outside of the Houston area. Can you tell us what's going on with your family? Because I know you tweeted some incredible video and very powerful stuff from down there.
Yeah, yesterday the flooding got real bad back in my home, and it breached our house, and so my family had to evacuate to stay with some of my aunt. And, it was kind of tough for me yesterday waking up to seeing that, the home I grew up in being destroyed. But seeing that my family, my mother and brother are okay, and then my sisters, she's doing good, just pushed me to keep going harder and to, not to worry as much. And they kept calling, and I kept calling them to make sure everything was going great with them and making sure they were all right. And, they're safe and sound right now, but the only thing we've lost is the house. But those are just material things, and that's not as important as they are, so we'll worry about that later once everything's gone down.
Yeah, so glad to hear everyone's okay, and such amazing perspective for you. Obviously, to be watching it from here, to be so far away, what has that been like for you? How challenging has that been this week?
It's been very tough for me, being the way I am with my family. I see myself as the head of the family, seeing that my dad passed away a couple years ago. So being absent in this time of need for them, was really hard for me to deal with, and it was kind of hard for me to focus on practice yesterday because they were all that was on my mind. I was just trying to make sure they were good and, make sure they were safe. But they are. My family down there has taken care of them. My aunt, my uncle, they went to go get them and make sure they have enough supplies and food and all that. And just, they did their best in trying to make me calm down and not worry as much and not worry myself to death up here, being so far. So it was tough at first, but they're good. They're in good hands.
Plenty of families just like Bright's obviously in major need down in Houston. Here's how you can help. redcross.org. Make a $10 donation by texting Harvey, or you can visit youcaring.com/JJWatt. If you've been following him on social media, he's been leading a major charge for the city. His new goal, $15 million. His initial goal, just $200,000. Hitting the headlines with Lindsay in just a moment. Why Oregon State needs to be the aggressor against the Vikings. And after the break, Xavier Crawford and Brandon Arnold on how they push each other.
Says he talks a lot of trash to you when you're watching film.
Yeah, he does, but I can do the same to him. When he tries to talk trash, I'll go ahead and pull up a game where I remember him doing something, I'll talk a little trash too.
Stevens pulls it, throwing, takes a huge hit as he sends it downfield, and it is intercepted, picked off. Kyle White has the interception. Stevens is laid out as he was drilled. A takeaway for the Beavers.
Well, a couple of big plays in the secondary in week one. In order for that to continue, they need Brandon Arnold, Xavier Crawford to step up. We're talking expectations with those two in our Buster's Barbecue Q&A.
And he's going to throw the middle shot. That's picked. And this one, Brandon Arnold is bringing back. He throws on the run, and it's knocked out of the hands of Devin Ross.
Xavier Crawford was all over that ball.
You guys are the anchors of this defense the last couple years. What's it like to be going into, another season?
It's actually a good feeling, knowing that I played with him last year. So it's not like I'm learning anything new. We know how we both play, and we can play off of each other.
What makes Crawford good? He's edgy.
To the end zone. It is intercepted. Xavier Crawford played the ball.
Is there a bromance going on there at all?
Nah, just.
Don't be ashamed if there is.
That's my brother. That's my brother.
Says he talks a lot of trash to you when you're watching film.
Yeah, he does, but I can do the same to him. So when he tries to talk trash, I'll go ahead and pull up a game where I remember him doing something, I'll talk a little trash too.
I won't call it a bromance. Call it as my brother.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bromance. We're definitely we're really close. Outside of here, we're always hanging out, whether it's working out or just hanging out. And I think we are growing really close to him over the past few years.
Well, a peek at how the pass defenses looked in the Gary Anderson era. Big improvement last season, allowing just 211 yards a game. Game 1 of 2017, 334 yards through the air. Describe your feelings about the secondary this season.
Need to be better. What's interesting is that PSU is, we don't think, going to pass the ball a ton.
Yeah.
They are a running team. Their running back had 20 carries against BYU. Now, he only got 55 yards, but BYU, that's Kalani Sitake defense right there. So it'll be interesting, though, because I think the secondary did look vulnerable the first game. Again, tough after just one game,
Sure.
But does PSU try to put the ball in the air early to see how they adjusted?
Right.
Yeah, and how they match up. I think one of the things that helps that passing game or that pass defense is rush. It's the pressure of the quarterback. Earlier, you saw a highlight of the interception by Kyle Wright, where he was pressured by, I think it was Kessie Ahoy, the freshman linebacker, and he hit the quarterback, which led to the interception. So if they're able to create a pass rush and rush, Eason, I think that pass defense is going to fare out pretty well.
And let us not forget that Michael Gallup on Colorado State is one of the premier receivers in the country.
Yeah, he's probably going to go in the first 3 rounds.
Right. So, those numbers are skewed.
Yeah.
Who do you like in this group? Who do you think is going to step up? I mean, Tristan Decoud was one that I think really had a breakout year last year. People were really excited. Is there somebody in that group you feel like is just really set up for success this season?
Well, you talk about the sophomore slump all the time. So what's Xavier Crawford's year going to be like when you can look at the whole season? I'm really interested to see that. You know, he was a freshman All-American, had really good numbers. But also, I can tell you that voting on freshman All-American teams can be very challenging. Yeah. So sometimes guys wind up there that maybe aren't that good in comparison to all of college football, but they were a freshman who played right away. So many freshmen don't play. So can he improve on his numbers? That's the big thing this year.
And the thing is that he's going to match up a lot of times against the top wide receiver on an opposing offense. So last week, you talk about Gallup. I mean, there was a play there where it was he and Gallup, and it was like, number one against number one, the best receiver against the best cornerback.
And like veteran against young guy.
Exactly, right. Gallup got the best of him, the better of him on that specific play. But I think as the years, progresses, I think he'll get a little bit better, become more seasoned.
Yeah. We're going to take a look at some of the breakout stars for Portland State. I know, Lindsay, like you mentioned, I mean, really, they've been trying to balance out what has been a dominant running attack under Bruce Barnum. They've really lacked a downfield threat. Who do you feel like the secondary is going to have their eyes on?
Well, I think they'll definitely have their eyes on the tight end. He is kind of reminiscent of a Noah Togiai, where he's kind of like gets targeted a lot, big-bodied, kind of mans the middle of the offense in the middle of the field. Outside of him, I think Adams also is probably someone that they'll look out for as well too. Kind of a bigger receiver, a little bit 6 foot, 200 pounds or so. So, what do you think?
I think also the tight end, and what's interesting is this tight end, Charlie, again, we're not going to butcher his last name on TV, but he's lost almost 30 pounds since last season, according to the roster. So that changes. You wonder, is he more mobile? He was already a pretty big guy. Yeah. He's 6'3", 220 now. So that changes things. We talk about Noah is like a stout, Noah's 6'4", 246, according to the roster. So curious to see how that goes. But I think they're going to run the ball, early on and a lot.
Test that run.
And the quarterback is going to move. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Right. Well, more to come here on Go Beavs. Right now, we're sending you over to the OSU Beaver store where Evanson is getting you ready for Saturday.
Hey, Beaver Nation. This week, we're here at the men's section. Check out these shorts. These are hot. I mean, you can jump in the pool with them. You can hang out and just chill around the house with them. These are lightweight. These are really awesome. I love this look right here. And you got the tank tops. This is really cool, lightweight, really good. Sun's out, guns out, fellas. And then, exclusive right here, the Beaver Kicks. The only place you can find these are at the OSU Beaver store. Fans start here.
Well, plenty of Beavers football coverage coming your way each week. Talking Beavers airs Wednesday nights at 7 p.m., then Inside the Huddle featuring Gary Anderson Thursdays at 10. And, of course, Go Beavs gets you ready for game day Fridays at 9 p.m. Time now for our standard TV and appliance headlines of the week. Our reporter, Lindsay, is giving us all the top stories. And this first one, dealing with Saturday, is really all about setting the tone, right?
Absolutely. We all saw Gary Anderson pretty fired up after that blowout loss. So this week down in Corvallis, I asked players, what's the best way to get over a blowout loss right away?
After a big loss like that, you want to come out to next week and try to do that to a different team. So, we try to dominate every week. That's always the goal, and unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily turn out that way all the time. But that's definitely going to be one of our, our mentality is come out here and just pummel them to the ground.
We can't just let this loss let us, bring us down the whole season. So, we got to use it as fuel and come out next week and just come out and fight ready to win and stuff. Because I know they're coming out hungry because they played a good game against BYU. They saw us lose by 30 against Colorado State, so they're expecting them to come in here and beat us. We can't just play down to their level and stuff like that. So we got to make sure we've got our details and right and just keep everything good.
So really want to jump out early then.
Absolutely. It's all about setting the tone against an FCS opponent. You want to make sure that people know there's a reason you're playing in two different divisions. And I thought Villeman brought up a great point there. Portland State saw the Colorado score too. They probably watched the Colorado State game and are thinking, man, we can play with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to take that belief out right away.
And the second one has to do with, you think one position group is going to be huge, one position.
The tangle of the tight ends this week. We have talked a lot about Noah Togiai returning for Oregon State this season, finally healthy. He was huge for Oregon State against CSU, 7 catches, 67 yards, 1 touchdown. Quarterback Jake Luton has said Noah's sort of a safety valve for him over the middle. But on the flip side of that, Portland State's tight end Charlie, can't pronounce his last name, not going to butcher it, but 6 catches for 73 yards. He was big for them. And then something else worth pointing out, Amanda, BYU's tight end led BYU in receiving in their win over Portland State, which communicates to me that maybe PSU is a little vulnerable over the middle there.
And Noah Togiai, I think, had a lot of people excited after game 1. You know, you finally saw him back from injury. So it'll be fun to watch him for the rest of the season,
Absolutely.
for sure. Number 3, a very different tone. Obviously, the Beavers basketball team returning home after dealing with being part of that terrorist attack in Barcelona. What's going on this week, Lindsay?
So Wayne Tinkle addressed the media for the first time since Oregon State returned. They were in the hotel right by the street where that terrorist attack happened, where 14 people died. Very harrowing experience. The Beavers were one of a handful of teams over there. They decided to finish their trip. They were just at the beginning. It was good. Tinkle talked about coming back together, regrouping, how that can bond you. And then this week, assistant coach Greg Gottlieb, his wife Mandy, posted a first-person account on Facebook. She had a very terrifying experience out with both their little girls, Quinn and Tess, on the street, winds up pushing him behind her. They were just a few feet away from getting hit. Fortunately, they were okay. They managed to run back to the hotel. This is Quinn right here. It's her birthday today. She's turning 7, and that's Tess, Mom Mandy, of course Dad Greg, and then that's Gage. So great for everyone to be home, but just insane to think about how closely this hits people at Oregon State.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you kind of mentioned Coach Tinkle talking about, you know, the bond that can happen on foreign trips. You know, obviously this is a terrible incident, but what kind of effect do you think this has for basketball season? You know, does this bring people together?
I think so. Sometimes weird things can build camaraderie. You know, at Oklahoma a couple years ago when they played in the college football semifinal, they had a really awful incident in the spring with some racial stuff on campus. They wound up having so many talks about it as a team. They talked later about, man, we bonded in the spring, so maybe this is an opportunity. Oregon State, I'm sure all those players talked about it. I think there's a decent chance that when the Beavers hit practice in October, they're already going to be on the same page, partially because of that awful thing that happened, but also just because, in general, foreign trips tend to help you build chemistry early.
All right, thanks so much, Lindsay. Certainly more to come here on Go Beavers. We're giving you our ingredients to victory, what the team must do to beat Portland State this weekend. Go Beavs rolling on, and back-to-back early starts for Oregon State. 11:30 last weekend, 11 this week. So here's a look at how the Beavers have fared in early kicks. Losses for Gary Anderson. It's been a rough go. I want to know, you know, Coach Anderson said there's not really much to it. You know, they practice early sometimes. As a player, what are those early kicks like for you? How much does your schedule really change, or does it not?
It sucks.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I mean, it sucks because everything gets moved up. You know, so you have to wake up earlier. You have to have breakfast earlier. You have to do pregame earlier. So we're creatures of habit. Naturally, as an athlete, you're a creature of habit. You like things to be one way. You don't like it to be mixed up. And when you have an early kickoff, that becomes more of an issue where it's like, okay, now everything gets moved up and you have to get mentally prepared. So yeah, I never liked it. I never did as a player, and I'm sure the players now don't like it, and neither do the coaches.
And someone who covers it, I don't like getting up early. You might like getting. I hate getting up early.
The one thing though is they do practice in the morning, so this should not be bad for them. Now you keep in mind they don't stay. Most of the time the team stays in a hotel in Albany, and then so they have to get up earlier to come back. But I don't think it's that big a deal. And then you're done early. I think that it's better than when you go to a 7:30 kick and you get home at 2:30 in the morning, and then you got to wake up the next day and do homework all day. But it's also out of their hands. And you want to know how you don't have a bunch of 11 a.m. kickoffs? You win games.
Yeah.
You win games,
Absolutely.
You're in the primetime slot.
Absolutely.
Ask the
Absolutely.
Ducks.
Yeah.
All right.
Hit it at 5 a lot for a few years.
It is time now for our Papa John's ingredients to victory. If the Beavers score a touchdown in the game, you win the following Tuesday with Touchdown Tuesday. Just use the promo code Beaver7 for 50% off your online order. So, Jason, let's start with you.
Well, so there's two things for me. Number one is that they have to be able to run the ball. They have to be able to impose their will. The offensive line needs to open up holes for Nall, Tyner, AP. I mean, you have all this talent in the backfield that isn't being maximized. So if they're able to run that football the way that I know that they can and they know that they can, then this is going to be a tremendous game for them, and they'll get that dominance that they've been looking for in that game. And people will forget somewhat about the CSU game. Secondly, I think that they need to pressure the young quarterback. He's a freshman quarterback. He hasn't seen very much. This is only his second game now being a starter. And this is only his second game now playing against caliber team where it's not an FBS team. So I think that they could probably schematically do a couple different things that he hasn't seen before, confuse him a little bit, pressure him, and force him to make some bad decisions.
All right, Lindsay, what about you?
Mine go right in line with what Jason said. Number one, I think they need to establish the run early. Like he said, impose your will, get a big score, get Ryan Nall in a good rhythm, get Thomas Tyner a couple carries early. Second thing, no explosive plays for Portland State in the first half. That's usually how FCS teams beat FBS teams, is they get a lot of confidence in the first and second quarters. So you take all that confidence out. If PSU has a couple explosive plays in the third quarter when they're losing by 40, who cares? Hopefully then at that point a bunch of young guys are in and you're getting other kids reps, but no explosive plays the first half.
Yeah.
An interesting thing about this game is this is one that the Pac-12 is doing this with a couple of the games this season to cut down on the length of games. They're reducing the break times between the first and second quarters and the third and fourth. Halftime also shortened from 20 minutes to 15 minutes. Where do you guys feel like this is really going to be felt? Will it be felt at all? Does it make much of a difference?
You know how else you can shorten the game? You know how else you can shorten the game? You can run the ball a lot. Okay?
Yeah.
That's why it takes 6 hours for Washington State to play a football game, because they just put it in the air constantly.
I'll tell you who'll fill those, condensed time is the bigger guys.
Sure.
The offensive linemen, the defensive linemen, they don't have enough, they won't have as much time to kind of gather their breath and be able to, go on to the next play.
And that's when a lack of depth, and if you don't have kids play, if you have some injuries, that's when it can catch up.
Huge.
But this is for the good of college football, so everyone can adjust.
I was going to say, Jason, are you in favor of it? This is good, bad?
No, it's good. It's good. I definitely think it's good. We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, we will be back here for Talking Beavers next Wednesday at 7 p.m., breaking down all the stuff that goes down in tomorrow's Oregon State-Portland State game. We'll see you then.